The church was packed that morning. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting vivid colors across the polished wooden pews. Parishioners whispered prayers under their breath, their voices blending into a soft hum that filled the sacred space. Father Gregory walked slowly down the aisle in his ivory robe, a warm smile stretched across his face. To the congregation, he was the embodiment of purity and grace, a man who had devoted his life to God's service. But not everyone saw holiness in him. At the back of the church, a barefoot girl stood quietly, her dress torn and dirty from days of wandering the streets. Her hair was matted, her lips cracked with thirst, but her eyes glowed with something sharp and knowing. Her name was Amara. The last time she had come to this church, she had been desperate. Her mother had lain dying in an alley nearby, and Amara had clutched Father Gregory's robe, begging for food or medicine. Instead, he had pried her hands away coldly, declaring that the church was for the pure and holy, not for beggars. He had turned his back on her without a second glance. Her mother died 2 nights later. Now as she watched him smiling at the crowd, something strange happened. The air around him seemed darker, heavier, as if shadows clung to his shoulders like writhing snakes. Amara blinked and rubbed her eyes, but the vision remained. She stepped into the aisle, lifted her hand, and spoke words that froze the room. "I can see your evil." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Mothers pulled their children closer. Father Gregory faltered, his smile vanishing as he scanned the pews. Amara's voice rang out again, stronger this time. "I can see your evil." Every head turned toward the small girl now standing boldly in the center aisle, her finger pointing straight at him. For a moment, the priest looked stunned. Then he forced a chuckle, though it never reached his eyes. "You poor child," he said gently. "You've suffered too much. You must be confused." But Amara's gaze did not waver. "I'm not confused. You tell them you are holy, but I see the darkness in you." A nervous murmur spread through the church. Father Gregory's jaw tightened as he hissed, "You don't know what you're saying." But Amara's eyes narrowed. "Yes, I do. I know what you've done. I know what you're hiding." The priest's hands trembled as he reached toward her. "Enough!" he barked. But Amara stepped back, her voice rising above his. "You think no one knows? But I know. And if you don't tell them, I will." The congregation stirred uneasily, voices rising. "Father, what is she saying?" Someone called. "Is this true?" Another demanded. Gregory tried to steady himself, insisting he had done nothing wrong. But his voice cracked at the edges. Amara's finger did not waver. Her next words sliced through the silence like a blade. "You remember the children in the basement?" The priest froze. The blood drained from his face. He whispered under his breath, "No one could know about that." But Amara heard him. "They know now." The church erupted in chaos. People shouted, demanding answers. "What's in the basement, Father? What have you done?" Gregory stumbled back, shouting that the girl was lying, that she was nothing but a filthy beggar. But Amara's voice cut sharper than his anger. "Confess, or I'll make them all see it too." Sweat dripped down the priest's temple as his eyes darted around the room. How? How do you know?" he stammered. Amara's lips curled into a faint, haunting smile. "I didn't know," she whispered. "But he told me." She lifted her finger and pointed upward. The crowd gasped. Father Gregory sank to his knees, trembling. No, this isn't real," he muttered, his body shaking. But Amara only stared down at him, her eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. "You have one chance," she said softly. "Tell the truth before it's too late." Then she turned and walked slowly toward the altar, leaving the entire church in stunned silence. Behind her, the once proud priest collapsed in sobs, the sound echoing through the holy halls. The priest's sobs echoed through the pews, filling the church like an ominous hymn. The once proud man now knelt trembling in his white robe, his face pale and damp with sweat. Parishioners stared at him, some horrified, others confused, as the air in the room seemed to grow colder and heavier. At the altar, Amara stood silently, her small figure framed by beams of colored light streaming through the stained glass windows. "You have one chance," she repeated softly, her voice carrying an unnatural weight for such a small child. "Tell the truth before it's too late." Father Gregory shook his head violently, clutching at the fabric of his robe. "No, you can't know," he whispered. "You weren't there." "No one was there." Amara's eyes narrowed. "I see everything. The congregation shifted uneasily. "Father," an elderly woman called. "What is she talking about? What's in the basement?" Another voice shouted, "Answer her!" "Is it true?" Gregory's breathing grew ragged, his lips trembling as he struggled to speak. I was trying to help them," he stammered. "You don't understand. It wasn't supposed to be like this." Amara took a step forward, her finger still pointed at him. "Tell them what you did. Tell them why the children cried in the darkness." A collective gasp swept through the room. Finally, the priest broke. "I found them on the streets," he cried. "Years ago there were children, orphans with nowhere to go. They begged for food outside this church, and I took them in. I gave them shelter in the basement because I couldn't let the others see. The elders wouldn't approve. They said it would bring shame to the house of God, so I hid them." People murmured, glancing at one another in confusion. "You hid them in the basement?" a man asked. Gregory nodded frantically. "They had no parents, no future. I thought I was saving them. I fed them scraps, gave them blankets, but there were too many." His face crumpled with anguish. "I couldn't care for them all. Some got sick. Some didn't make it." The congregation erupted in shouts. "You let children die," someone cried. "Why didn't you tell anyone? You're supposed to be a man of God." Amara's voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You hid them because you were ashamed, not because you wanted to help." The priest shook his head violently. "No, I wanted to help. I was afraid they would take my position away, that they'd shut down the church." Tears streamed down Amara's cheeks, but her expression remained hard. "You buried them in the darkness and left them to suffer. You thought no one would see. But he saw." She raised her hand and pointed upward. "He sent me so the world would know." The room fell silent, even the air seeming to stop moving. Father Gregory collapsed completely, wailing. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wanted to repent, but I was too afraid." He fell face first onto the cold stone floor. At that moment, the doors of the church burst open. 2 police officers entered, followed by a social worker. "We received an anonymous tip about missing children linked to this church," one officer said gravely. "Where is the basement?" Father Gregory sobbed harder. "I'll take you there. I'll show you everything." The officers nodded and led him away as anxious murmurs spread through the congregation. Amara turned to face the crowd, her small chest rising and falling as if she had carried the weight of 1,000 lifetimes. "She wasn't lying," the elderly woman whispered in awe. "That child, she's a messenger," another murmured. As the priest was escorted out, he turned one last time to look at Amara. His voice shook. "How did you know?" Her eyes remained clear and unblinking. "I didn't know," she said softly, "but the one who sent me did." Weeks later, the church basement was transformed into a memorial. Flowers and candles lined the steps, and the names of the lost children were etched into stone. The town never forgot the little girl who walked barefoot into the house of God and exposed the shadows hiding within its walls. And Amara, she vanished as mysteriously as she had appeared, leaving only whispers behind. Some said she was an angel, others believed she was a prophet, but no one could deny that she had changed everything.